What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So today's video, we're going to look at something that I feel is very interesting. For the past few years, since the release of, say, Arkham Origins and even Arkham Knight, there have been a lot of questions as to what Warner Brothers Games Montreal has been doing and what Rocksteady has been doing in terms of video game development. There has not necessarily been some sort of a cohesive, or I would say a coherent understanding as to what games they were working on and, what direction in a creative sense these studios were going towards. Now, over time, we started to get a little bit more details. We saw that Warner Brothers Games Montreal was working on a Damian Wayne game that was possibly supposed to follow Batman Arkham Knight, but that did not come to fruition. We got to see leaked concept art. We got to even get some more rumors within, that came from I don't know where. But it was quite interesting to see all of these things having been in existence at some point. Now, you think about that and you say, well, it appears also, and for those of you who have been following, shout out to the Video Game Fight School community, by the way. A lot of people here are on the beat when it comes to some of the most, recent news and developments surrounding the game. The most recent right now that's, crawling around the web is the possibility that a Superman game is probably in development within Warner Brothers Games Montreal. Now, to that I say, from what I've heard and from what we've seen, it appears that that project is no longer a thing. So not only has that Damian Wayne game been canceled, we have Gotham Knights as a result of that, and the Superman game, according to one of the developers and artists associated with the studio who commented on one of my videos on this channel, that they mentioned that that particular Superman project has actually been canceled. And what we have in being Gotham Knights, it was as a result of having canceled the Damian Wayne game and the Superman game. So this is actually very interesting to find out at this point in time. Now, why I'm making this video is not necessarily just because of these 2 points. In fact, more information has come to light surrounding Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Now, for those of you who know, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League right now is actually being developed by Rocksteady Studios. Rocksteady is the company, the development firm that developed the Arkham City, Arkham Asylum, and Arkham Knight games. Now, this is very interesting because we've seen their own presentation, and we basically know that the game is supposedly scheduled for next year. But here's something that's crazy. Jason Schreier, at the time that there were rumors about this Suicide Squad game from Rocksteady, he mentioned something regarding a little bit of context that surrounds this game. Is a tweet that he actually put up from August 7th of 2020, and he says, and I quote, "Some added context for today's announcement. WB Montreal was working on a Suicide Squad game until it was canceled in late 2016. At some point, end of 2016, 2017, Rocksteady started theirs. The game will be teased at DC Fandom, but I wouldn't expect it for a while." So this is very interesting. It appears that somewhere, somehow, before Gotham Knights was a thing, or maybe while Gotham Knights was maybe in a preconception phase, I don't know what order it'll be. This would be something that I would probably have to go ahead and just speculate over. There was a Suicide Squad game in the making in the Warner Brothers Games Montreal studio. And somewhere, somehow, if this is true, that project was canceled and Rocksteady pretty much perhaps got the license or got the green light to go ahead, and Warner Brothers Games Montreal came up with the Gotham Knights idea and they executed on it. And to me, I think this starts to make a little bit more sense. In fact, me and some of our audience members here, and shout out to Baki, we've been talking a lot about the game and marketing. And for anybody who knows, the marketing for Gotham Knights seems to have suffered a lot. And I just don't know if this is as a result of perhaps a lot of those cancellations. We don't know what the progress of those games were before they were, canceled. Now, we're not also, I would say, ignorant to the fact that games can't get canceled all the time. There are so many games that have been canceled, or some games that have not necessarily been greenlit after the pitch meetings, or after the developers make prototypes and show it to, top brass. Like, say, the Middle Earth Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor games. Those were supposed to be Batman games, and then somewhere around the line, they changed to a Lord of the Rings themed game. And then, even while they were still pitching the idea, they wanted everybody to play as an elf, or, a dwarf and all the others, and an exec said no one wants to play as an elf, which is absurd to me, because gamers were like, what? Who said we don't want to play as an elf? So they had to merge an elf and a human being in that storyline, according to some of the research I've looked at. But back to this whole fiasco. I think right now what we're seeing is, somehow, Rocksteady has been focused. Probably they also had the intent to wanting to make a Suicide Squad game, and they were probably given the green light. Or maybe Warner Brothers Games Montreal had some challenges. I've been looking through as well some of the history of the studio, Warner Brothers Games Montreal, to look at some of the very, critical staff and critical leadership in the studio, and when some of them took the helm. And it seems to me that it makes a little bit of sense, that these projects probably were getting a refresh in terms of maybe the leadership and all of the above. You would have to have been in the studio that long enough to know how these things transpired. And the truth of the matter is, many developers are not necessarily going to say much regarding these things. If they do, they'll probably maybe, reveal it to people like Jason Schreier, who are very, very good at keeping their, informants confidential, and they already have a trust system with them. But I think this is quite interesting, and this is quite unique, that this is the game that was born out of multiple cancellations and all of the above. And it brings us to that point that video game development is just very, very interesting. At the end of the day, developing a video game is something that I wouldn't want to do. It's almost a nightmare in a sense, because, gamers are quite demanding of specific standards. The Arkham games have already set this very interesting standard over the last few years in superhero gaming. And Warner Brothers Games Montreal, they're coming into this particular, competition with, in my opinion, what I feel is they're not at an advantage. I think they have a disadvantage, a very clear disadvantage, because they're making a game in a universe where another studio that's actually quite talented has already set the gold standard. And so when you think about the directions that they wanted to take that were not, provided for them, it's a very interesting situation as to how all of this is going to go. Now, here is my deal. I've always said that for the most part, and as much as many people might, point some things to development and all of the above, but, those of us in this community, we're not unaware of the things that go on within game development. And we're not unaware of Warner Brothers themselves in terms of their leadership, in terms of Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, and so on and so forth. I think for the longest time, a lot of people running the Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment have not necessarily been quite aware of what the audiences have always wanted. If you think about the Snyder Cut fiasco, if you think about some of the movies that have actually been, put out just lately, if you think about some of the cancellations, if you think about even the establishment of CNN Plus for $350 million, it starts to kind of say, well, I mean, even if you might want to say, okay, maybe the developers may have some things that they're lacking, I think it's something that you can probably chalk down from, all kinds of different layers, if you were to ask me. And then another thing too, which is quite interesting, which we're not even pointing out, is a very huge decision that was actually surrounded the Middle Earth Shadow of War game, where they added that shop where people could go buy time savers, and then Warner Brothers eventually made the decision to go ahead and close down the shop. Who would have made a decision like that in the first place, to add something like that to a game, when the core developers, which is pretty much Monolith, they made the first game, it didn't need any of that. They got a very, very huge, set of praises from the community, and then in their second game, somehow the developers just thought, oh, why don't we just make more money for it? No, most developers don't think like that. I think most developers are in a position that they want to just make their audiences happy. But at the end of the day, there is that conundrum of the people that are, pretty much sponsoring the project. And this is going to be very, very interesting to see nonetheless. But so far, so good. This is actually giving me a lot more perspective and a lot more context, which, I'm going to play Gotham Knights with these things in mind. Now, it will mean I may have to handle the game with some soft glovery in a sense, because, you know, when it comes to critiquing a game, we can comb through everything. I mean, even if you wanted to say, okay, maybe they started development in 2017 for this game, it's still been 5 years. 5 years should be enough time to develop a game. This is true, but if you were trying to develop a game for cross console and then at some point you realized that the old gen couldn't do the job for you and you had to switch in between, you know, you're still in a very awkward position nonetheless. But I will say, though, for those who are not necessarily in the area where they're not certain and all, you might want to go ahead and just maybe, you know, I don't know, wait it out a little bit for those of us who are maybe doing reviews, doing critiques, giving our opinions, and people along the lines of the community, and make before you pull before you pull the trigger and make the purchase surrounding this particular game. But it is quite cool, though. I just thought I'd share this for a little bit of context for everyone here in the community, and I wanted to hear you guys' thoughts regarding this. And hopefully we'll talk soon. So I appreciate you guys. Hit the comment section and throw some more context surrounding this if you know of anything that I've actually missed. And I guess we'll continue this conversation in another video. Thanks so much for watching. Peace out.